It's been a wild summer for weather in China. Record-breaking heat waves and torrential rainstorms have swept across the country. From scorching sun to soaking storms, it feels like the weather is swinging from one extreme to the other, and fast. Hello and welcome to Climate Watch. I'm Zhou Fang, sitting in for Feifei. In today's episode, we take a closer look at the extreme weather events unfolding across China this summer. We also speak with Ma Jun, director of the Institute of Public and Environmental Affairs, about the intensifying heat waves and what they tell us about climate change, and explore how cities and individuals can better adapt. Over the past week, torrential rain has lashed Beijing and surrounding areas in Hebei province, with a week's worth of rainfall matching the region's annual average. The storms have left dozens dead and many more displaced. Meanwhile, record-breaking temperatures have scorched parts of Henan, Sichuan, and Xinjiang, with some areas hitting over 40 degrees Celsius. For more on what's behind this summer's extreme weather, my colleague Gao Junya spoke with Director Ma Jun from the Institute of Public and Environmental Affairs, a Beijing-based non-profit organization focused on environmental research.
Director Ma, given the earlier onset and extended duration of heat waves in recent years, what are the primary factors contributing to these changes, in your opinion?
Yes, in recent years, we have observed an increased frequency and prolonged duration of the heat waves in China, but also globally. And this phenomena, to most of the scientists, are driven by a combination of climate change and also some natural variability. When it comes to natural variability, over the past 2 years, 2023 and 2024, the world experienced a El Nino effect, and El Nino usually could contribute to the temperature rise globally. But more importantly, I think it is a result of a global climate change. This is a much longer term impact, and behind that is the continuous rising of the greenhouse gas concentration in the atmosphere. Particularly the primary greenhouse gas is carbon dioxide, and the concentration grow from 280 ppm in the pre-industrial age to currently it has topped 420. Significant increase, and the total emission, instead of going down, is actually still going up globally. So this is the primary reason behind this. Of course, there are other human factors that impacted this. One of that is the so-called urban heat island effect. The urbanization is happening globally, and the mega cities with all the paved up areas, concrete buildings, full of concrete buildings, the temperature could be several degrees higher than some of the surrounding green areas. So in summary, this is a result of a combination of both climate change mainly caused by human activities and also a natural variability, including El Nino.
Yes, Director Ma, last year, 2024, actually is the warmest year since global record began in 1850. And correct me if I'm wrong, I think it also broke the record set by 2023, right? 2023 was also broke the record of the warmest year in the world. So is this year 2025 going to break the record again? Are we going to see warmer years going forward?
Yes, you're right. 2023 was the hottest at that time. It set a record of temperature rise, but then that record got broken last year. In 2024, again a new record. It was the first time for the global average temperature to rise above 1.5 degrees Celsius for a single year. In China, the temperature rise last year also set a record, but it's not as high as globally. It's about 1.1 degree above the average, but still for the springs, summer, and autumn, it's all set the record when it comes to the high temperature. So it is a very tough year. It was a tough year for China last year. And this year, we have seen the heat wave came earlier. The first hot day of some of the major cities in China was about 1 month earlier than before, particularly in some of the northern cities this year. Even in May, some of the cities, the high temperature have exceeded 40 degrees Celsius. Having said that, because this year it's supposed to be a La Nina year, La Nina usually have some cooling impact on the global temperature. So far, the global temperature year on year has not been higher than last year. Hopefully, we're not seeing a new record for this year. Having said that, the World Meteorological Organization have made a sobering forecast that including this year, over the next 5 years, there's an 80% or higher chance for another very hot year, and the temperatures are again going to be above 1.5 degrees Celsius.
We know that you've been at the front line of environmental protection. You've been observing climate changes. Based on your observation, are there any new weather patterns or climate signals emerging that we should pay attention to, besides this global heat?
Yeah, there are some phenomena, some weather patterns that deserve attention. One of the prediction is about under the current emission trajectories, the heat waves could start earlier by 2050. It could be 1 month or even longer, even more earlier, and the durations could be extended as well. It could be more extreme. The heat wave could be more extreme. We actually have already seen some of the trends in comparison between the last 30 years and the 30 years before the last 30 years. We have seen the heat waves came earlier and drag longer, and also we have seen that some of the nighttime temperature higher, going up. In some of the cities, it happened much more frequent. So all this are troubling because if it is extended beyond 24 hours, it will be very difficult for people to adapt to that naturally. In many cities, people have to depend on aircon 24 hours for days. That's not just difficult for people to adapt, it's also very difficult to put extra pressure on the power grid to sustain. And of course, we're also seeing all this rising sea temperatures. All of us, we can feel the atmospheric temperature rise, but it was unknown to most people. The sea temperature is also going up, sometimes even at a higher rate, and that could also have a profound long-term implications to the global temperature and the sea level, and also of course, the ecosystem, and of course, all the scientists and policymakers. Many of them could be highly concerned about some of the tipping point, including, for example, for the Amazon forest to get drier and drier and turn into a carbon source instead of a carbon sink, and also for increasing all these glaciers and the sea ice on the Arctic Ocean, could be melt completely during summertime, and all these are quite concerning.
Yeah, speaking of that extra energy pressure you mentioned just now, because we know that recently there is this energy grid strain here in China due to soaring electricity demand. So in your opinion, what lessons can we learn from this issue? Like during heat waves, how can we cope with the rising energy demand?
In recent years, globally, we have seen some incidents of power shortage, or even in some cases, extreme cases, power outage. When it comes during the heat waves, it will cause a very big social economic impact and having a direct health impact on people. In China, I think one of the hard lessons we learned is in the year 2022 when Sichuan and Chongqing, the upstream of the Yangtze River Valley, suffered from more than 40 days of extreme heat wave, and side by side there was a very bad drought. As a result, the hydropower capacity, which provides the primary power supply in some of the cities in that region, was under extreme pressure, and so there was a power shortage and also rationing during the extreme heat, and that was a very hard lesson. So I think, of course, lessons have been taken, and to ensure the power supply has been made a top priority. And part of the reason for some of the fossil fuel, particularly the coal power project, they have been kept in operation, partially, to ensure the energy supply. And so power grids are also being upgraded to deal with such extreme weather events. Of course, in China, I think the biggest response given is to continue to diversify the energy sources, by expanding the installation of renewable energy. Wind power and particularly solar PV power stations have been expanded at an unprecedented speed. Last year, China achieved the 2030 target set for wind and solar installation capacity. And this year, it further topped the 1,400 gigawatt, and for the first time, it's higher than the capacity of the coal power, the installation capacity. And solar alone, the installation capacity surpassed 1,000 gigawatts. And of course, how to adapt to such a high penetration power grid is also posing a new challenge. And with that, we need to do our own homework to ensure, we continue to expand our energy storage capacity and build long distance power transmission capacity, and make our power grid smarter, and explore innovative solutions such as V2G, vehicle to grid power grid. And all these are being piloted and researched in China.
Yeah, I think, besides this energy supply sufficiency and also diversify the power supply pool, what else has China done or China is doing to prepare and respond to the heat waves? I'm imagining maybe China is expanding, let's say, some wetlands. Maybe that will also help to increase China's climate adaptability. I don't know. Does that adaptation, does that work?
When it comes to adaptation, China has published its national climate change adaptation planning, and try to integrate climate resilience with equity and also tech-driven solutions. Among these solutions, one of the adaptation, one of that is innovative urban planning, try to build more resilient infrastructure, to expand the sponge city. Instead of having all this paved up concrete construction, we substitute that with permeable surfaces and urban wetlands, and to combat the heat island in impact effect. and also to try to introduce more green and along with all this hardware the construction, the software part is also equally important. And in China, a lot of efforts have been made to enhance the weather forecast and early warning capacity to make sure that we can give warnings to people, make more accurate forecasts, and give warnings to people, in a more effective way, and also enhance people's awareness because extreme heat waves are something new, and some of the most vulnerable groups, including the elderly groups, may not have the sufficient knowledge and understanding about this, and most of the urban residents lack the understanding about how to deal with all this heat wave induced diseases. So we need to also try to enhance that ability as well.
Yes, climate change affecting each and every one of us. I'm wondering, is there a difference? Like, the global heat actually is posing a bigger impact on developing countries when it comes to the impact on developed countries. And in your opinion, do developed countries have responsibilities to help developing countries to cope with such extreme weathers?
Yeah. Yeah, thank you for the question. I think I agree with that. Of course, heat waves knows no boundaries. All the countries in most of the countries in the world actually have experienced all this impact. But the big difference is the ability to adapt to that impact. The developed countries have much higher capacity to deal with that, and in comparison with the developing countries. When heat waves and extreme rainfalls, flooding coming up occurred, and when all these extreme weather events occurred, the developing countries are the most vulnerable, and they lack the capacity to deal with that. And many of these countries, in some of the most underdeveloped countries, power electricity is not something that can be insured. So during the hot days, there's no way to adopt solutions like using air cons. And with all of this, the impact is higher. And the developed world has a responsibility to help the developing countries to deal with this climate change impact from the industrial revolution. The utmost majority of the greenhouse gases are emitted by the industrialized countries. In comparison, most of the least developed countries, many of them have minimal contribution to the global climate change, but now they are suffering the most. So with that, I think the developed countries have a moral responsibility to provide help. Of course, it's not just financial support is extremely important, but technologies and capacities sharing and all these are also very important as well.
We've talked about how China has been preparing to deal with the heat waves, and how the international community needs to work together to respond to the heat waves. And when it comes to individuals and local communities, what practical advice can individuals and communities implement to cope better with those extreme heat? And
I think this is important question raised because although we are taking all the efforts to try to deal with the climate change, and globally there's a Paris Agreement, and in China we set target for carbon peaking and neutrality, and taking solid measures to try to mitigate. But the global temperature rise is something that gonna get worse before it get better. 1.5 degree target is not quite realistic. At least there will be a period of overshoot. Is that it will be it will go up the 1.5 degrees Celsius before it come back. If we can really significantly cut our emission by 2050, heat waves will intensify, and we need to adopt proactive measures. Individuals, households, and communities all need to adopt to that. It can save lives. It can reduce the suffering of humans. So I think for individuals, it's very important for them to pay attention to the monitoring data and to the forecast, to the warnings. If there's a heat wave warning, then make sure you stay hydrated and do any outdoor activities, intensive activities in a smart way. And don't try to go out to do all this hard labor or intensive exercises during the real hot hours. And at home, try to modify the home for passive cooling. And of course, turn on the aircon and close the window during the very hot hours. But in the meantime, for mid or long-term planning, you want to modify the homes for passive cooling. And for the communities, I think if add more green, plant trees, or create sponge cities, and then last but not least, try to build up the emergency response system.
And that brings us to the end of this episode of Climate Watch. A big thank you to Ma Jun for sharing his insights. And thank you for tuning in. See you next time.